Hey guys, it's Monday on Slurve, and that means it's time for Cash Game Cornerstones. I'm Steve, bringing you some of the best cash game plays for tonight's slate on Monday, July 18th, it looks like. Alright, time to start keeping up with dates. So it's a pretty interesting slate out there, honestly, because we got some good, expensive pitching, namely in the form of Jose Fernandez, but there's also Chris Sale and Kluber out there, and then not a whole lot of good mid-range options. We got that, and then we got Coors, and Coors is really priced up today, especially on DK. It's really hard to get some decent pitching and some Coors bats in there. But I don't know that we need it, because there are some good deals elsewhere, and let's talk about those. So starting off at catcher, a position that I like to punt a lot, or at least, maximize my salary there, let's put it that way. One of the nicest options from Coors, or I should say one of the cheapest options from Coors, although he does match up well being a righty against Drew Smyly, is Nick Hundley. 3.8 on DK, 3.3 on FanDuel. I think he's the cheapest projected starter actually in Coors overall on both sites. So if you need some Coors exposure, I think that's probably a pretty good way to go about it. There's also James McCann, which is not, one that I'm super excited about, but it's a price thing. He gets Nolasco, who's not particularly good, but McCann and a righty-righty. It's not particularly good either, but still 2.8 on DK, a full 1,000 cheaper, and 2.2 on FanDuel, more than 1,000 cheaper. Definitely worth consideration, especially when you take into account that Detroit has almost the same run total as the Rockies do in Coors, so, or at least it's over 5 point something. So I think McCann is the way to go if you're punting that position, at least as things look now before lineups are out. Sticking with that Detroit game, and actually on FanDuel sticking with catcher a bit, I also like Victor Martinez, good old V-Mart in there. I think he has a really nice matchup with Nolasco. It's 3.7 on DK, so pretty reasonably priced there, and 3.1 on FanDuel where he is a catcher. So that's also worth consideration. I'd probably just go with Hundley there, but I could see both. And then also there's Miggy in that game. If you're on FanDuel or if you're not playing V-Mart on DK, he's much more expensive, as he probably should be. 4.6 on DK. He's only 3.6 on FanDuel, so I think a really nice price there. And one thing that was pointed out to me kind of after I made my notes, so I don't have it all written down here nicely, is Chris Davis is actually probably a better cash game play than I thought when it comes to ground ball pitchers. His average is kind of over 300 in the last 2 seasons, and he's also only in like a 26% strikeout rate, but it's a lot less than his normal one. So, I think he's definitely in play. He's kind of cheap on both sides. I want to say like 43 on DK and 35 on FanDuel, somewhere in there. Too cheap. But speaking of cheap plays, assuming this guy gets in the lineup, I kind of got disagreeing projections depending on where I'm looking. Kenneth Vargas against Matt Boyd, sticking to that Detroit game, just the other side of it now. 3.6 on DK, so a little bit cheaper even than V-Mart, and 3.0 on FanDuel. He's just been crushing lefty pitching, and we got Matt Boyd, who's kind of a below-average lefty there. I'm sure you might consider what's his name, Logan Morrison, but he's expensive, and Tyler Anderson is not bad, especially against lefties. He's pretty good against lefties, so I would not take Rays lefties today in general. Rays righties, on the other hand, Logan Forsythe, I think, is one of my top plays from Coors today. He's just really expensive on DK, especially. I mentioned Tyler Anderson. Tyler Anderson's better than you think he is, probably, depending on how good you think he is, I guess. But especially against lefties, he's good. Against righties, he suffers a bit, and Coors makes up for a lot. So 5.1 on DK, it's just like, oh my god, for Logan Forsythe. But Logan Forsythe is actually pretty darn good. 4.0 on FanDuel just seems way too cheap to me, so if you can afford him at all there, I would go ahead and do that. That said, there are a couple of other plays that I really like, especially at their prices on FanDuel. One of those is Derek Dietrich against Aaron Nola. Nola had a really hot start to the season that's fallen off a little bit, but all the way through he struggled with lefties a lot more than righties. Enter Derek Dietrich. 4.0 on DK is over 1,000 cheaper than Forsythe and Coors Field. If he's leading off, then I just love this play even more. If he's not, I still like it. 2.8 on FanDuel is almost silly. And then there's Zobrist against Matz. This also will depend on how good you think Matz is. I'm starting to waver a little bit on my how highly I consider him, or how much I'll avoid him in a matchup anyway. Zobrist is all the way down to 3.9 on DK and 2.9 on FanDuel. If he's leading off for the Cubs against a lefty, I don't mind him. It's a good price. So at third base, I expect Evan Longoria to be very popular. This probably means he will go completely unowned, because I'm not terribly good at predicting ownership. However, he double-donged yesterday, and people seem to really latch on to that kind of thing. He's playing in Coors now. He goes up against a lefty pitcher. Things do line up pretty nicely for him. He's 5K on DK, which is, expensive, but honestly not unreasonable for the matchup in the situation that he's in and the player that he is. It's 4.3 on on FanDuel, so right there in that price. I was kind of surprised, honestly, going through the pitchers today at how bad Brandon Finnegan is. I had it in my mind that he was a bit better than he is, better strikeout stuff, but no, it's shitty, especially against righties. So if we need a cheap play at third base, we've got Adonis Garcia here. May not be the most attractive play, especially when coming off of Evan Longoria there, but he's actually not that bad. He can hit with power. He hits lefties well. He's probably batting near the top of the order. Only 3.3 on DK, 2.9 on FanDuel. I don't mind that play at all. On DK, there's also Gordon Beckham to consider, who is also second base eligible at 3.6. On FanDuel, his price is too much. I'm not considering him there. But both of those guys against Finnegan, who really struggles with righties and just isn't terribly good in general, I think can offer some salary relief where you need it. I'm trying not to focus too much on Coors, guys, because it's kind of obvious. But Trevor Story is a good play versus Drew Smyly. Actually, probably my favorite Rocky play. Unfortunately, on DK, it's 5.4, which is just madness. I mean, not that it's just hard to fit with what we need to do at pitching today, I feel. I think it's a pay-up day at pitching, at least for Jose Fernandez in cash, and that just makes hard to get one 5K guy in, much less multiple ones. But on FanDuel, he's only 3.9, much more attractive there. Love him at that price there. On DK, I'd almost prefer going with a Manny Machado versus Ivan Nova. He's 4.1 on DK on FanDuel. He's no longer shortstop eligible. Very sad. So don't consider him there for third base. Too expensive. If you need the real salary relief, then the guy I got for you may not like, Ketel Marte against Chris Sale. So not an appealing matchup by any means whatsoever. However, that being said, he's only 2.5 on DK. Fills a tough position at shortstop. I actually like Seattle probably a lot better than most people do against Sale today. But this is mostly about the fact that he's leading off at 2.5K. Assuming he is leading off. If he's not, then just whoosh, wipe this away. And on FanDuel, he's 2.3. Also great salary relief, but you probably don't need it quite as much there. And I also really like, really is an exaggeration, but I also like Tim Anderson, particularly on FanDuel against Wade LeBlanc. 3.9 on DK is, I'll pay $200 more for Manny Machado, thanks. But 3.0 on FanDuel definitely puts him in consideration if you need some salary relief, but don't want to go all the way down to Ketel Marte, understandably. I'm running really long today, so I will go quickly through the outfield here. We got Ryan Rayburn, hopefully in the lineup against Drew Smyly. In the past, he was extremely popular versus left-handed pitchers, but that seems to have fallen off a lot this year. 4.1 on DK, 3.5 on FanDuel. Great prices there. I like him. On the other side, of course, field, Steven Souza against Anderson gives us another righty bat for not too expensive, 4.0 or 4.2 on DK, 4.0 on FanDuel, like him much less on FanDuel. But on FanDuel, I love Christian Yelich against Aaron Nola. He's 5.1 on DK, he's 3.1 on FanDuel. I think DK is more correct in his pricing here. However, there's Carlos Beltran against Gaussman, who's 3.2 on DK and 3.7 on FanDuel, and I like him better than 3.2K, although I like Gaussman quite a bit, but I think Beltran is one of the guys who can do damage to him. There's Matt Holliday, who seems still underpriced against Friedrich, kind of a below-average lefty, 3.5 on DK, 3.0 on FanDuel. And then also, I think there was maybe a pitching change in Houston because there's some odd pricing there, including Josh Reddick for 2,700. Assuming he's in the lineup against Mike Fiers, lefty-righty there, I think that's just a steal, almost like a must-play as far as that goes, even though I don't believe strongly in must-plays. But that brings us to the end of my cash game cornerstones. Oh, and I didn't write down what he was on FanDuel because it wasn't that appealing. So that's the end of our cash game cornerstones, and come on back later. We're going to be having the expert chat live at 5 Eastern today. That's where you will get all the updates from the day and all of the very best advice that all our research all day long can provide you. Also, there'll be the Daily Dong Finder out later today, and just come on by the Slurv tailgate, slurv.com. It's free to sign up. Once again, I am Steve, this is Slurv, and this has been Cash Game Cornerstones for Monday, July 18th. One day I'll get the date right. Good luck.